Well, good evening. Call the Ames Area Metropolitan Planning Organization Transportation Policy Committee meeting to order. Good evening, committee members. We have one item on the agenda tonight, and that is a hearing on the amendment of the federal fiscal year 2025-2028 Transportation Improvement Program. Kyle and John, turn it over to you.
Yeah, the only change since this item was brought to the committee in November was that we had a 10-day public comment period, and we did not receive any comments.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the policy committee? Hearing none, I declare a public hearing on the amendment to the federal fiscal year 2025 and 2028 Transportation Improvement Program to be open. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to address the committee on this item? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on resolution approving the amendment.
So move for approval. Second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. All right. Policy committee comments. Anything from Linda? Anything from supervisors? Phil? How about council? Or side ride? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
We're not adjourned.
Well,
We're not adjourned.
oh yeah.
Let's stay.
There's
All right, good evening. Call the regular meeting of the Ames City Council for Tuesday night, December 10th, 2024 to order. Welcome, everybody. We're going to start off with a proclamation before we get into the remainder of the agenda. You're doing solo tonight?
I guess so. You abandoned me.
You got good reinforcements. Wreaths Across America Day. Whereas the National Wreaths Across America program began in 2007 as an expansion of the Worcester Wreaths program for laying wreaths on the graves of veterans at Arlington National Cemetery each holiday season, and whereas the mission of Wreaths Across America is to remember the fallen, honor those who serve, and teach our children the value of freedom. This mission is symbolized by laying holiday wreaths on the graves of fallen heroes on the third Saturday of December of each year. The theme for 2024 is Live with Purpose. And whereas the Wreaths Across America program in Ames is organized by the Ames American Legion Riders with support from American Legion Auxiliary, and Sons of the American Legion. Due to the holiday, the 5th annual wreath ceremony will take place on Saturday, December 14th at 11 a.m. at the Ames Municipal Cemetery, with wreath placement immediately following the ceremony. And whereas there are approximately 1,900 veterans laid to rest in the Ames Municipal and Ontario cemeteries, and wreaths will be placed on each grave. And whereas Ames residents owe a deep debt of gratitude to all of those who served, are serving, and will serve in the armed forces. The Wreaths Across America program in Ames is an outstanding example of how we honor sacrifices made by our fallen veterans. Therefore, I, John A. Hale, Mayor of the City of Ames, Iowa, do hereby proclaim Saturday, December 14th, 2024, as Wreaths Across America Day. I encourage Ames residents to join in extending thanks and appreciation to our veterans and their families for their service and sacrifice. It's my privilege to introduce Jamie Barker, who's going to share a few words.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and it is an honor to be here today amongst all of you. I do want just 1 second. I'd like to give the mayor, who's participated in each of the 5 years of our wreath laying, every ceremony he's been there. So here's a pin for you. I really appreciate that always. And I also have just some bracelets, so you guys, all of you, if you don't mind sharing around. We'd like to thank all of our council members and the city of Ames. Many people that you're looking at have personally donated to our cause, buying wreaths. And if you've never participated in our ceremony, I'd like to strongly encourage you to do so. What we do is we take a wreath, we take it to the veteran's grave, we present the wreath to them, and we say their name aloud one more time. And they say that a veteran dies twice in their life, once when they take their last breath, and once when their name is no longer said aloud. So if you'd like to, I'd strongly encourage you to come participate in our ceremony. And again, I'd like to thank you, not only for the proclamation, but the cemetery for allowing us to do that there. They take real good care of us there and help us coordinate and identify all of our veterans that none of us want to forget. I will leave a couple of our flyers that do tell a little bit about when it is, where it is. So take a picture with your phone on your way out. I'll just leave them at the back. So we hope to see you on the 14th of December at 11. And thank you once again. Keith Abrahamson, right? Abraham, thank you so much.
Yeah, I would just thank everybody who's involved in the Wreaths of America. I've been involved a couple of times when I've had the opportunity to, and laid wreaths, and it is an emotional thing, and it really resonates to me, and I think a lot of people, with what you said, Jamie, about they die twice, and we don't want to do that. They've given a great sacrifice, and we do always want to remember them, and we are very thankful and very proud to help do whatever we can to make this happen. So thank you to all who are involved, and if you haven't been involved, you haven't gone out, I'd really encourage you to take yourself, take your family, take kids, so they understand the sacrifices that these individuals have made. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to consent agenda. Council, is there anyone that wants to pull any item from consent tonight?
Mayor, I'd like to pull items 18 and 19, please.
Anything else? All right, entertain a motion to approve consent, less items number 18 and 19.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye. Aye. So in looking at item 18, I noticed that we've got one of the groups that's not being fully funded. And that's because the event that the India Cultural Association is putting on may only be partially aligned with the goals that CODA has for their funding program. But it is a program that actually fits very well with our city council values and goals. And since they're only, $570 short, I was hoping that maybe we could check with the Human Relations Commission and see if they had any educational funding left. And if they don't, whether council would be willing to approve $570 from council contingency to go to the India Cultural Association for their event.
Questions, comments? Entertain motion?
So I would move that we ask the Ames Human Relations Commission if they have $570 that they could put toward funding the India Cultural Association event. And if they do not have that money available, that council contingency make up the difference for that particular event as it meets our council goals.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Garden.
Aye.
Aye. Poirier.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Amy Henson.
Aye.
Pritchard.
Aye.
And number 19.
So number 19 is our annual outdoor sculpture exhibition, which I always enjoy. But I noticed that the final item that has been recommended for display isn't actually something that has been produced yet. And so it was approved on the basis of a rendering. And my experience with artist renderings is that you don't always get what the rendering shows. And so I'm a little bit concerned about approving something that does not yet exist for this exhibition. And we do have recommendations for alternates, one of which is also a wavy metal sculpture piece. And so I would be interested in seeing us replace the concept with the actual alternate piece, which is called stainless steel with steel base, I think. No, something out of nothing. One. I don't know what anyone else thinks about that.
I don't know.
You have feedback, Brian. This is under your purview, right?
Yeah, the Public Art Commission discussed this at its last meeting. They did discuss specifically the fact that one of these sculptures has yet to be produced, and they wanted to continue with pursuing that one and inquire with the artist whether he felt confident like it could be produced in time to be displayed in April. And then if not, move on to one of the alternates if they didn't feel like the artist was confident that it could be made. I don't have any opinion or recommendations about if you want to move on to a different sculpture.
Do you know if we have approved concepts in the past?
I don't recall a time that that has occurred.
I do know that in the past, we have approved sculptures that we later found out we should have had actual photos of from multiple sides. And this is not a photo. It doesn't exist. So my concern is that we don't know what we're going to get with this piece. And I would prefer that we approve something that actually exists already.
It seems that council really has looked to our boards and commissions for direction. I suggest an alternative that this number piece that you talked about be held in reserve, but that this artist has the opportunity to produce something and provide pictures. But the artist understands that if it doesn't meet with the commission's approval by, I don't know, when do they get put in? April? May?
April is when they're delivered and
By
installed.
some date in March, that they will be, the contract will become null and void because you want to see a picture, not just a concept, and then move on to the next one versus just basically just throwing out what the commission selected.
Do we know that the alternates will be available still if we do not approve them now?
No, we don't know whether any of these are available yet. PAC has moved the timing of when this entire sculpture application process occurs because a number of the sculptures have become unavailable before we can get to them in past years. So this is much earlier than it has been in the past. We haven't reached out to any of the artists pending the approval here.
I think given that especially, it might be okay to proceed with PAC's recommendation because, you know, there's still time, I think, to figure it out if it doesn't work. But this is also, I mean, the one that we didn't get pictures of from all angles before, that was like, was that an anatomical issue on that
It
sculpture?
was.
So I don't think there's any risk on this particular wavy metal sculpture that will get anything objectionable.
I don't know. It's a concept. It doesn't exist yet. So I don't know. My concern is just that we typically put pieces in that already exist and that they're being judged on their merits as existing artworks.
Okay, let's get a motion on the table, please.
Well, so I would move that we not approve the rendering, but instead ask to replace it with something out of nothing, which is one of the alternates.
Is there a second? Motion died for lack of second. Is there another motion?
I'll move approval of number 19.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
O'Leary.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Bedger.
No,
Garten.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, move on to public forum. It's time we set aside for comments from the public on topics of city business other than those on the agenda. We ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. I see Richard, you're interested in starting us off tonight.
I wish I could say this concerns the city as much as it does Mr. Trump. It's like I got a letter from him saying he wanted more money. And it's like I wanted to say, it's like the first time I ever wrote him was before he was president the first time. And it's like I talked about how what American soldiers were seeing in Iraq were what box after box of thick bundles of $100 bills that poured it right in front of American GIs, took a torch and burned it all. Babbled on, do you love anyone in Iraq? Do you love anyone in America? Do you love yourselves? Do you love your paychecks? Did somebody pay you guys to come to our town to make yourselves look like a public nuisance? We love you, Americans. It's America's God we don't give a damn for. Are you guys America's God? You sure act like it. You don't like our national leaders? Pick who our mayor ought to be. Only if they ask you something, you answer them. If they tell you to do something, you do it. I ask you, Mayor Hala, you know, if you could make up your own oath of office, what would you swear to? And I asked that to Trump before he was mayor in a letter, and I wrote it to Harris too. And all I get from him is he wants more money from me. You know, and I wrote him.
Richard, is there anything else in city
You
business?
know,
Richard.
I can't even give away my money here in Ames.
Richard, please. Anything else in city business tonight?
How come? I don't know. It just makes me upset.
So anybody else wants to address council tonight under public forum? Seeing none, we'll close public forum. We'll move on to item number 23, zoning text amendment to allow social service providers and single-family conversion conservation overlay.
Good evening, council. At our last council meeting, you directed us to prepare language for an updated zoning text amendment related to social service provider uses by approval of a special use permit within the single family conservation overlay. We've prepared that report for you. The language is prepared as a draft ordinance. It is designed to allow for, consistent with the prior motion, one additional social service provider to be approved by a special use permit within those designated blocks along 7th Street and Clark. The nuance of the language is it's related to a property may be approved. So that means, as we describe in the report, it does not create an option for 4 social service providers to kind of exist, to discontinue existence, and then be reestablished somewhere else in the area. All the ordinance allows is for 1 additional property after the stated date to have a social service provider use approved. So that means that if one of the uses was to close or change use, it could not be reestablished because they're not permitted uses as the way this is written. And they're currently not permitted uses within the overlay. And then beyond the 7th Street and the Clark blocks that are designated, the use is not permitted anywhere else in the overlay. That was consistent with the direction from the council as well from November. Are there any questions about the language of the draft ordinance?
So I don't know if I don't know whether it's a question about the language or the philosophy behind the language, but we're allowing 1 more social service provider if we approve this. And there seems to be an assumption that that social service provider will be the Romero House. But I don't really understand whether that means that we're saying there's 1, but if somebody slips in an application, I don't know who that would be, but is there anything that says here that this is going to guarantee the result that council was seeking with their vote?
I don't know what result they were seeking.
Well, I
Short
see it was
answer,
approving.
the short answer does not guarantee Romero House will be approved for their idea of a social service provider. It does not reserve a slot for 1 user.
But we're kind of assuming that they're ready.
They're in the queue to ask ZBA for a special use permit, but ZBA might not.
Yeah, there's no queue. There's,
Well,
No,
yeah, I
it's
mean,
just they're-
they've
they've got
indicated
to
they want
request
to
it.
do this.
Yeah.
They're the
Mhm.
only entity to indicate they want to
Yes,
do this.
exactly.
As you said, we don't know if there's others.
And so in the odd event that they don't carry this forward to ZBA, somebody else could do that with any of the properties along, well, that are mentioned, right, in those specified blocks.
Correct.
Other questions? All right, we're going to open up public comment, and tonight the public comment will be strictly limited to the verbiage that's included in the ordinance. Council has had 2 sessions with public input in favor of and opposed to the inclusion of or creation of this ordinance. Council voted to go ahead and move on and consider this ordinance and have a first reading. So we're going to go ahead and open up public comment, but I'm asking that you limit your comments only to the text of the proposed ordinance edition that is included in the packet. So, Richard, do you want to comment on this one particularly?
I want to know how many people made comments on this. You know, it's like I remember when
Richard, I've asked that people make comments only on what's included in the packet, which is the language on the ordinance.
Well, it's like I know when the city was doing the tagline for the city of Ames, they had 7,000 comments. And they closed the meeting to any
Richard,
further
that's not
discussion.
ger-
I want to know
Richard,
how
that's
many
not
people
germane to
made
the-
comments to this one.
I have 2 cards right now. David Carter, you're welcome to come up here and offer your comment relative to the ordinance.
Dave Carter, 709 Douglas. So germane to the language, I would express the same concerns that Gloria has, that we're open-ended on who else might apply and what the process would be if there were more than one application.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Kate? Gregory?
Hi, Kate Gregory, 803 Kellogg. My question is, council's only allowing 1, But until this approval, there were none allowed. And so what will be the enforcement mechanism for this movement, this amendment that you're approving? Thank you.
Is there anybody else that wants to address council on this topic? All right, seeing none, we'll close public input. Kelly, can you respond to Kate's question?
It'd be the same code enforcement process that we would apply to any property across the city. There's nothing unique about this type of permit process or the use itself. So if the city's aware of a use that does not match the zoning ordinance, then my office will reach out to that property owner, ask them for more information to understand what they are doing, and then make a decision based on the evidence that we can gather if they're consistent with the code or not. And our practice in coordination with the inspections division then is to send a notice of a municipal violation. And that usually gives you a time period to come into compliance. If it's a small thing on your property, it might be 10 days. If it's something more substantial, maybe it's a little bit longer to allow for you to get that removed. And then there's a process back and forth if they don't come into compliance, and eventually if they are non-responsive or unable to meet our requirements as staff, then we would issue a municipal citation, and that would be enforced through the courts. And that can has an appeal right also embedded in all of those decisions. So that's how we approach every case in the city, and that would be the same for this.
Kelly, can I ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
So if it's the same code enforcement process, and one of the things that we've discovered is that we don't always get notified about providers. Now, I'm assuming with the special use permit that we would know that somebody is trying to use one of those properties as long as they're going through the process.
If they don't apply for the permit, it'd be the same issue that we had in the past, right? But once you've applied for a permit, then you're going through a review process to be permitted. Enforcement of conditions on a special use permit is similar as any other code enforcement as well. So if a special use permit was to be approved and the Board of Adjustment added conditions, those are the same as having ordinance standards. You must abide by those to have your permit.
So could you explain, there was a question that was sent to us via email regarding what is to stop people from going ahead and just, since we don't proactively go out and check properties, let's say ABC decides they want to set something up in the overlay district. Walk through what process would happen. So we need a resident or someone to notify your office. Is that correct?
Yeah, we could become aware of a building permit inspection or something else, but it could also be a neighbor or anyone else in the community asking if a use is allowed on a property, and that would then trigger what I said, where my staff would reach out to the owner of the property and ask some questions about what's going on, and then we would go through that and decide if it is compliant with the zoning ordinance or not.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, entertain a motion on the ordinance.
Alternative one,
Second.
And that is Tim.
to approve the first reading of the ordinance amending section 29.1101C of the Ames Municipal Code to allow social service providers by special use permit on certain properties abutting commercial zoning as stated in the attached draft ordinance.
Thank you. Roll call.
Edie Hansen,
Aye.
Becher,
No.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk, Aye. Fourier.
Aye.
Mullins. Oh, sorry.
Okay,
Mullins.
no.
All right, first reading passes 4-2.
Okay, and just for everyone that doesn't keep track of their city council calendar, your next meeting is on the 17th. That could be second reading if that was to pass. And third reading would be intended to be on January 14th, presuming it passes on the 17th.
Thank you. All right, move on to item number 24, second reading of ordinance for industrial tax abatement for Whiffle's site plan at 220 South Teller Avenue. Any questions for Kelly on this one? Otherwise, I entertain a motion on approving second reading.
Move on second.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Fourier,
Aye.
Rollins,
Aye.
Edie Hanson,
Aye.
Thank you. And entertain a motion on second reading of ordinance for rezoning of 3200 University Boulevard from RI Research Park Innovation District to FSRM Floating Suburban Residential Medium Density with PUD Plan Unit Development Overlay.
Move on second.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Garten,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Fourier,
Aye.
Rollins,
Aye.
Edie Hanson,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Thank you. I entertain a motion on second reading of ordinance for rezoning of 3300 University Boulevard from RI Research Park and Innovation District to FSRM Floating Suburban Residential Medium Density with PUD Plan Unit Development Overlay.
Move on second.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Junk,
Aye.
Fourier,
Aye.
Rollins,
Aye.
Edie Hanson,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Thank you. Move on to item number 27, preliminary plat for 4925 and 5299 Lincoln Way, Sunset Ridge Subdivision, 12th edition. Kelly?
For this item, we recently annexed around 120 acres on the west side of the city, which included land on Ontario Street as well as this property here on Lincoln Way. So tonight is a preliminary plat that's creating 4 lots out of these parcels. 3 of them would be unbuildable outlots in a temporary status, and 1 lot at the end of West Bend would be buildable for a single family home. So West Bend ends really kind of hard to see, but ends in this area here. You also have Durant stub to this corner here, and you have Westfield, which doesn't actually touch the subdivision here, but up here to the north along this site as well. So as part of this project, the intent is to create 3 of these parcels to be able to facilitate a real estate transaction to set up development in the future. So although 1 home can be constructed off of West Bend as a result of this, future replatting would be needed to develop the other parcels. The intent is for Hope Lutheran is intending to buy the majority of the land to construct a church. And then off of Tabor, it's likely you'd see a 6, 7, maybe 8 lot single family subdivision addition off of the south side of Tabor. With this project, we are asking, or the applicant is asking for some waivers of street extensions, specifically on West Bend. It's been a stubbed public street for some time to that property, but is no longer intended to go through the property and connect to Westfield. And the applicant is asking for a waiver of the standard ending of terminus of a public street, which is a cul-de-sac, which is a 90-foot paved circle. And they're asking if we can waive that due to the conditions of the site and provide a private fire turnaround as part of a private driveway system. So in this unique case of these conditions, this has not been done before. Staff does believe it does meet our minimum needs as a city for the fire turnaround at the end of this road that has not existed in the past. So we're supporting that. And then also eventually with development, a water main looping would occur from West Bend down to Lincoln Way, and that would occur with the development of the Hope Lutheran land along Lincoln Way. So the public improvements would, for the most part, match city expectations. Development in the future will have to go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment for a special use permit to construct a church. At that time, the ZBA would look at access, design features of the site, lighting, buffering, traffic that could be an issue with such a site development plan. But tonight, as a plat for 4 lots, 3 of which are unbuildable, we just don't have that information. That's not related to the platting of the property. So is there any questions about the proposed plat? You'll notice the next item is a final plat of the same thing. And we're recommending approval.
Thank you. Questions?
So Kelly, the fire turnaround, are we assuming that that is, that's at the end of West Bend, like
It
immediately
is.
west of West Bend?
Yeah, for some reason I can't rotate the plat, but this purple area is at the terminus of West Bend. That area would have an easement put over it, and then it'll have a roughly 60-foot paved, or I should say stabilized surface that a fire truck can do a 3-point turn on to make it back out of that area. And you can see the blue indicates a water main easement location as well.
Are they coming off of Lincoln Way for their access for the church then, or do you know?
In some way, yes. So whether, I don't think we have a final answer yet exactly how the frontage road turns into a driveway into the site versus whether there's another driveway location off of Lincoln Way to serve it. We haven't had a traffic study done. We haven't seen a final plan for the facility yet either.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? All right, open up public input. Does anyone want to address council on this topic? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Is there a motion on resolution approving final plat?
So
Move
moved.
alternative 1.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Corrier,
Aye.
Rollins,
Aye.
Reading Hanson,
Aye.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
All right, item 28, final plat.
I have no comments.
Any questions? Well, public input. Anyone want to address council on the final plat? Seeing none, close public input. Entertain motion on resolution approving final plat.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Rollins,
Aye.
Reading Hanson,
Aye.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Corrier.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, item 29, resolution approving extension of sidewalk installation deferral for 404 and 408 Cochrane Parkway.
So as a request from an owner, this was a condition of consolidating 2 properties to finish the construction of a sidewalk. They had not completed this and needed to ask for an extension. I think staff's question really for council is how long of an extension to grant. They have asked to have all the way through August of next year. Construction season would start obviously before that in the spring, and it could be installed sooner. They would prefer to wait till the end of the summer when they would have more time to complete their landscaping project. So it's up to council to grant the deferral or what time frame to allow.
Questions for Kelly? Open up public comment. Is anyone who wants to address council on this topic? Close public comment. Is there a motion on alternative 1 or alternative 2 or alternative 3?
Move alternative 1.
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? Roll call.
Reading Hanson,
Aye.
Fletcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Corrier,
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
All right. Item number 30, request to defer implementation of annexation covenants by separate owners of 2114 and 2126 State Avenue. Justin?
Yeah, thank you very much. So this is an item that we brought you back in October, and it involves a request that we received after discussions with property owners here at these 2 addresses to defer annexation. So we're bringing this to you, back to you from October. Since that time, we have sent letters to the 2 property owners. And as of today, we have not heard any communication back, but we did inform them of the meeting tonight and the time. So with that, again, this is an item that council directed us to take up and engage with the property owners on from the last couple of years. That stemmed from an annexation of some Iowa State University property out here. And so essentially the same report from October. And, so that's all I have on it at this time.
Questions? Can you just highlight what are the pros and cons? Besides, obviously, there's being brought into the city, but what are the pros and cons for the city and for the property owners?
Mhm. Well, the property owners would receive city services, which would include police and fire. They, as you know, they're already hooked up to city water, so they already have that. They do have the opportunity to run for office in the city or serve on boards and commissions. So as far as coming into the city, they do gain those things. Coming into the city also does subject them to city property tax rates. So they would pay into the city levy rate. Other than that, their properties would come in as is. So, no major impacts as far as that goes. They would be subject to other city standards and city ordinances as they currently stand.
Do we have any past protocols or ways in which we've handled similar properties that we can call on for this?
None that really come to mind specifically. I think we mentioned last time these sorts of agreements. These aren't exercised very often, and on some of these we're getting around to the point. The ones that were agreed to in the last 10 or 15 years, maybe we're getting out to those areas like in this case. So I can't think of any specific examples.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, open a public comment. Is anyone who wants to address council on this topic tonight? If you would introduce yourself, and then you may begin. There you go.
I'm Margaret Eplin,
And I'm Ronald Mowers.
and we live at 2114 State Avenue.
That would be the property, the north property where the
The
arrow
north
is
property.
located. Yep, thank you.
And I know that this says on here, request to defer implementation of annexation, but we're here tonight to ask you to vacate the agreement because, I don't know, I'm not talking in this. Because we signed the agreement in 2011, and it was my thought at the time that we would receive like protection from the city for unregulated development around us. For example, the way development looks, bright lights, increased traffic, debilitating noise, emergency siren protection. These are things when I signed that, that's what I thought we would get. And in the meantime, in 2024, we now know that after recent negative ISU can't feed meal experience, the city council and the city of Ames cannot protect us from Iowa State, and we border them on two sides. For example, the debilitating noise has been, for me, unlivable. And we have worked with Iowa State. I write them a letter almost every week. It's not just me. There are others in the neighborhood. So it's just like the foundation on which we made our decision has just crumbled. At the time we signed the agreement, there was a fringe agreement between the county and the city, which no longer exists. And because of the fringe, we approached Xenia when our well went bad. We approached Xenia about water. Xenia had to come to the city council. They denied it. That's because we were in the fringe. There's no fringe agreement anymore. If we were with Xenia, we would not be in this position. Our taxes would go up $600 to $1,000 a year, according to your estimator. And the road we are on, which is Meadow Glen Road, it's on you can see it there on the north side, is a private road that we maintain and the whole neighborhood maintains. And it's a $300 a year cost plus a new assessment if we repave the road, which we just did, and it was $60,000. We just feel that we want it to be fair between us, the city, and the rest of the neighborhood. I personally called the city twice to file a noise ordinance or noise complaint, and I was told both times, city cannot help you. Call ISU police. Police came out. They were very workable, but they said they also cannot help us. The only person that can help us is the administration of Iowa State or the state of Iowa. So we just, to get it back to our neighborhood and we just would like to just vacate the agreement and not extend it anymore. And if you have any questions, I just don't see what we would be receiving. You cannot protect us from Iowa State on two sides. We are a completely built-out neighborhood. There's no development available. I don't understand why you would want us and what you would be able to provide for us for the additional expense.
Thank you.
If you have questions, I'm happy to. Do you have anything, Ron?
No, just reiterating that it was a lot different conditions now than it was back when we signed because of the addition of the ISU feed mill across the street from us. And yes, if we pay more taxes, we'd like to receive more services, but and if there are not going to be any more services, then we feel we should be able to vacate this agreement.
Thank you for your feedback. Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Council?
I'm interested in this agreement. Do we have that agreement? Which,
It's the
Attachment B.
That's
attachment in the report.
in the
Attachment
council
B.
packet.
which one is this?
Attachment B, I think.
The item is item 30.
Okay.
Page 109.
And there have been allegations that things have changed and what was put in place at that point have not been followed through. Do we have a response to that? I'm asking the city staff because there's been some serious statements made. I think they deserve a response.
So as far as the changes to the neighborhood, I think they're being referenced out there. Obviously, yes, there are changes that have occurred on the Iowa State property across the street and the general immediate vicinity there. As far as the calls to the city or the noise complaints, I don't have any answer for that. I'm not aware of what the details of those are. However, the agreement as it stands, it does not address surrounding conditions in the neighborhood as far as the covenants. So that would have to be something that would be considered independently.
So can you just comment on where the line stops and starts with our city's jurisdiction and Iowa State's jurisdiction and what they can do on their property?
Mm-hmm. So Iowa State University property, they are overseen by the university. So their building projects and the various things that they do are are governed as far as the development goes. We do, whenever they have building projects that come up or capital projects, they do meet with the city to kind of make us aware of them. So we've had meetings before on everything from the feed mill to other building projects around the edges of campus, Sci-Town, obviously, those sorts of things. So we are aware, when those go on, obviously, because there is an infrastructure issue where our infrastructure interfaces with theirs, and just kind of the general nature of development on Iowa State as it relates to the rest of the community. So as far as that goes, Iowa State, though, has their own planning department, so to speak, their own permitting of their own facilities. We govern non-Iowa State property or oversee that as far as our review goes.
So Iowa State could build anything they want north of this property and to the west, and they don't require any, they would meet with the city and essentially inform, but the point is they don't need any permission. It's state-owned property, and they do, and they're totally independent by themselves.
Correct. They're not subject to city zoning.
Right.
But in the agreement, I mean, it never said that the city would protect
Right.
from any of the externalities of development. What that was about was water at the time, right? It was providing, and I do understand the point about, if it were different now, they might not, they might be on Zoom. But the truth is that, the agreement was entered into to be served water, and none of the rest of it was covered in the agreement. So I'm sympathetic, I get it. And I get the complaints about the noise from the grain mill. I mean, this happened in the farm I grew up at too. There's a big ethanol plant. It's loud, it's bright, it's changed the quality of life. So I am sympathetic to that. And, I don't know that can affect my decision at this time, but I do hear that, and I'm sorry.
What's different here is that it's a public source of noise rather than the ethanol plant was private. And as the mayor sort of has indicated, we have very few levers to pull that have any kind of control over the use of that property. And I don't know if Mark wants to weigh in on this, but I don't know. I wish there was more that we could do to be of help. But I'm sort of at a loss to offer any additional guidance on that.
And this is still an area that's of interest with our Plan 2040, like that. This annexation fits into that plan.
Yes, it would. Yep.
Other questions or comments?
Play out for us just so we have the options. What if we decline to annex, just for the sake of discussion? How does that change our position as a city? Or how are we worse off if we don't annex these properties?
You mean if you would choose not to move forward,
Correct.
period, at any point in time in the future?
Well, at least today.
So, I mean, as of today, immediately, I don't see any impact, pro or con, to the city at this point. One of the options, obviously, or one of the alternatives, is to defer for a certain period of time. So if you chose to do that, we would reach out, we would initiate annexation. Then at the time, the deferral would be determined for, whether that's 1 or 2 or 3 years or whatever. If you would independently just choose not to annex at this time, we would not move forward with anything further, and we would wait for further direction.
So normally when we're annexing, we have a particular goal in mind. There's a reason why we want to extend the footprint of the city. Help us understand what is in the public interest of the city of Ames to annex these properties?
I think that to be honest with you, I think that's kind of hard to measure. I mean, the public interest is that the properties are brought into the city as they are being served by water with the intention of the original agreement. We being the city, initiated and signed that agreement with the property owners at their request for water. So I think that's probably the main interest, is that we are aligning, if you want to put it that way, we're aligning our utility distribution inside our city limits.
But they're paying for the water now. They're not getting the water for free.
Sure.
And remind me, it's been too long. Aren't there other properties that we provide water to that are not in the city limits of Ames? Is that true? I don't want to say something's not true.
There have historically been a handful, but a lot of that has to do with the nature of our interaction with the rural water utilities, where they have a certain territory, we have rights within a certain area, and if a customer requests that one or the other utility serve the customer, and that utility declines, then the other gets to serve it. So there have been some instances in the past where we have agreed to provide water service to residences outside of Ames because declining to do that would allow the rural water territory to extend into an area where it would make it difficult or uneconomical for us to serve around that area in the future. So it's been a kind of a dynamic related to that.
Yeah, this is an interesting situation. I have not had a scenario. I'm generally pretty big on annexation. I want to see Ames grow. I want to see us increase our footprint. But I'm struggling to find the public benefit to doing this. Given the negative externalities, and that's a good term, for doing this for the property owners, and there's not a corresponding benefit to the city. Help me understand that.
I guess my thought would be there may be other options to annex that we have pending, that we have negotiated as part of providing a service. And I would hate to set a precedent in doing some damage to that negotiation tool. Do you know what I mean there, Tim?
Sure.
So that would be the question I would have is, are there others like this out there where we've provided a service, and through the negotiation of that service, we have a contract like this on file that we could trigger when we want. I wouldn't want to, render this one null and void, and then know that ability to use that tool in negotiation is damaged somehow if council is not going to abide by it, and if a future council wouldn't collect on that negotiation.
I guess I would want future councils to do the same cost benefit analysis that I'm trying to conduct here. So I'm tasked with making a decision in the best interest of the community, and I'm trying to understand where the best interest of the community lies in this, in going forward with this annexation. If you can give it to me, I'm all in favor because I'm pro annexation, but I'm struggling here.
The 2040 growth plan is why.
That's the reason for annexing these two properties?
Well, and that we said we were going to, at the time that we provided water, and it's in our growth in the 24. I mean, I think that's what we're hearing anyway.
And they signed the agreement. And it didn't have, like you said, protection from any external that we can't control as well too. Are you saying that the Ames Fire Department and the Ames Police Department would not respond to a fire at these two properties right now? Is that correct?
So my understanding right now is that since they're outside of the city limits in rural township, someone else can probably speak better to that. But
So I've been through this question a lot. We are not the primary responder to any property outside of this city unless there's a call for mutual aid. So if you have something where you need police, the sheriff is the responder. If you're in the Kelly Township, the Kelly Fire Department has to come to you. If you're in the city, we're the first responder. And that's how it is.
So response time from Kelly to this property, if that's where it is, compared to Campus Town, would be potentially significantly faster,
Yes.
as well as response from police
Highly likely, yes.
versus the sheriff that is basically spread thin as it is right now across the entire county versus being located in the city.
Right.
So in terms of what additional services, the question was, it would be much quicker response from a fire standpoint and also a police.
Yep. So ambulance is separate, right? So ambulance service is not a first responder service of the city. That's independent, but the first responder would always be the fire department.
Okay, thank you.
Brian, can you tell us where Xenia's district is in this? I know we had a lot of discussions about that.
I believe it's
Sumwall
Sumwall Station Road in this area, and then at South Dakota, it's I think to whatever the gravel road is, just south of Highway 30 is the delineation there. So some of it's ours, and this area is definitely ours. And then as you go west, it becomes Xenia's territory.
And I guess the other thing I'm thinking about is that Iowa State could change its usage of those lands in some ways that might eventually get rid of the things that are currently a nuisance. And I would not want to endanger this tool when things could change, even though I'm not sure we need to enforce right now.
All right, further comments? Otherwise, entertain a motion on either one of the alternatives or on a amended alternative.
I'll move alternative 2. That's to delay it.
Second.
Okay.
We can see if we're in a position where we would be growing in that direction. We don't have to take action at this time. There's nothing pressing to do it right now, but this still puts it on a future calendar.
Can I just want to clarify because of how you worded that. So if there was a reason to include it with another annexation, the way this is worded, we would not do that until 2027 by resolution. So is it really meant that if there's no other reason to include them with another annexation, we would not approach them and say annex at this time?
And yes.
Okay. So if other properties needed to be annexed and this was part of that annexation, then that would be a time to also execute the covenant.
Okay, yeah, yes. So unless a need is known by then we would revisit in 2027.
I want to make sure, is the alternative number 2 written that way?
No.
And if not, then what amendments need to be made so Grace has a clarity in terms of the emotion?
Yeah, I would
also say it doesn't say exactly that. So I think we should all read the alternative.
All right, so don't withdraw your motion.
It doesn't say that. I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, all right.
And I
Go
think
ahead, Kelly.
So I believe alternative 2, which says decline to initiate the annexation of the properties at State Avenue at this time and pass a resolution that the council will accept the annexation application submitted to the city by July 1st, 2027 in accordance with the covenants. So what you're saying is you will not have, they need to apply by July 1st of 2027. You will not do any particular action until July 1st if they don't, but they still must follow the covenant. It's not a revisit timeframe.
Right.
It's a execution by July 1st of 2027.
Okay.
And to your point, if there were other properties in this area that were going to be annexed for some reason, would this motion preclude?
It would not, because remember, we won't hold you. We're not delaying a decision. We're just saying we will accept it consistent with the covenants if we receive it by this date. It's not promising nothing else will happen. It's just saying we're not going to hold you to the standard until July 1st of 2027.
And that's all right. That's
Yeah, and there will be no revisiting by council. It
Yeah.
would be a resolution that this must be done. Staff again would take it up.
And that is
And do that.
alternative two.
Two.
So I'll just move alternative.
You can.
Okay, all right, thank you for clarifying that. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
Betcher,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Aye. Corriere. Aye. Rollins.
Aye.
Edie Hanson.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, move on. Item number 31, solid waste management strategies. I'm just so tempted to use some kind of a snide comment or some kind of a pun or something like that, but I'm going to refrain myself from doing, talking garbage, So anyways,
Oh.
sorry.
There's lots of good possibilities.
I know. We'll just leave right there. So anyway, good evening, John. And
So since we've met with council this summer, we were able to finally meet with Metro Waste Authority in August. And in having a deeper conversation with them about potential partnerships, what we found out was there was going to be some hurdles in establishing a relationship with Metro Waste Authority. Their core mission and goal is to serve their member communities. And in doing that, we would be an additional waste flow into providing that service. So what they asked was that they would have complete control of all material flow, including recycling. And what that would do would be prevent us from marketing our own recycling, attaining the best price, things like that. They would be in control of the solid waste flow as well as the recycling flow. Other things we found out is that they would not allow us to have a seat on their board. So we would truly just be a user of their system, not an actual partner member of their system. And because their core goal and their use of their facilities is to serve their current members, another requirement that they had for us was that we exhaust all efforts to site a landfill in Story County before we'd be allowed to move forward with a waste flow agreement with them. And that would take many more years than we have with the pending end of our agreement with Boone. So at that point, we started looking at other potential partners, other potential landfills to partner with.
John, can I ask you just, I don't mean to interrupt, could you clarify, so does the Metro Waste Authority, do they know that we have these constraints?
Yes.
So basically, if they're saying you have to exhaust your opportunities in Story County, and they know that we can't do this, they don't want to go to prom with us, because that's a deal breaker. That's impossible, because we don't have a choice. We have to land this plane because we're losing our opportunity with Boone.
From a timing standpoint, that's correct. Yep.
So that's another way of saying they just don't want to work with us.
Possibly. Yep.
Okay.
So we then looked at other potential landfill partner agencies, including Marshall County, Eldora, Waterloo. And what we found was that Carroll County, the Western Iowa Waste Commission, provided us the best potential partnership. They're a very well-ran organization, very environmentally conscious. They share a lot of the same goals that we share. So what we're asking tonight is for a letter authorizing us as staff to continue negotiations with Carroll County Landfill to become a partner with that landfill agency. And just in preliminary talks with staff, they would view this as a true partnership. So we would receive a seat on their board. We'd share common waste goals while we would be taking material to them. We'd be looking at potential backhaul of recyclables, yard waste, food waste diversion. We would share in some educational efforts. So they're looking at this as potentially a true partnership agreement.
Wasn't there also electronics, John, that they,
Electronics would be another, yeah.
they can't have a market for it, and we can go ahead and help them out with that too. So it's a great,
Right.
so you have haul back basically both ways. No one's bouncing
Right.
empty one way. Is that correct?
And it could help us out too with economies of scale, both in dealing with that and having more recycling material to market potentially. So there's a lot of upside in this this potential arrangement.
I just want to comment too, is that I had a little bit of a preview, and that Bill Zindel is one of the board supervisors in Boone County, and you just comment on what they have agreed to do to how to help us. Also, they do want to stay at the prom with us. Go ahead.
Sure. And this is nothing official yet, but what we've heard from Boone is that if we have a plan in place, which this would do, then they'd be willing to extend our agreement for another 2 years while we build our facilities and get the new process off the ground.
Which is huge from a standpoint that initially was going to be ending middle of next year. Is that correct?
Right. End of June of 25.
Because they're starting to run out of space at their
Right.
landfill, and they were wanting to kind of preserve it for them. So I think we owe them some thanks for being willing to help us out from that
Definitely.
standpoint as a bridge. I think it's a great gesture on their part.
Yep.
John, I've got a few questions just to help tease this out. You mentioned that Carroll County has shared values with us. Can you explain to us what that means and what gives you the reason for that opinion?
Yeah, they require that all member agencies have a recycling program in place. So their first goal is recycling. They also are an environmental management system, and Mark might be able to explain a few more details on that, but it's basically they're focused on environmental stewardship.
Yeah, so with the environmental stewardship, they've got different goals that they have set, and they have to reach or show that they're trying to achieve those goals. So it's part of the EMS, but with that, then there's reduced fees from the DNR for annual tonnage going into that landfill. So with sustainability efforts with the city of Ames and Carroll County and the other communities, it'd be a benefit to both the city of Ames and Story County and then their community.
And I appreciate that. One of the challenges with landfills is methane gas capture. Could you speak to the way in which they approach that subject?
Sure. We've heard from their director that they have an RFP out right now to move forward with establishing methane capture at their landfill. So from a climate action standpoint, a greenhouse gas standpoint, that would be a huge step forward for that landfill.
Now, Carroll is a little bit of a drive. According to my calculations, about 70 miles, something like that, from point to point. So from our own climate action plan, could you walk us through how this would be in essence in furtherance, even though we're moving our garbage 70 miles away? I think there's a lot of people that I talked to about this that had questions. How can that possibly be in accordance with our own plan?
Sure. Yeah, the landfill gas capture is key in this. Also, as we move forward with building our own transfer facility, we would incorporate our own fleet. So the haulers would come into our facility, and then we would consolidate that. We would extract the metals as we do today, and then we would consolidate the rest and take that to Boone in larger semi-loads, and we would fuel that fleet with B100 fuel. So completely biodiesel fueled fleet.
Great, thanks.
John, or maybe Mark, I don't know. It seems like Carroll County has agreements with quite a few other partners.
Right.
And I'm just wondering if we were to work out an agreement where we're bringing back things like food waste and recycling, et cetera, are we then bringing back those items from all of the partners or just the Carroll County stuff? I know you got to discuss
You
this
know,
with
for
them, but
So, so some of the counties, they bring the material to the landfill, but most of those counties are doing the same thing as what we would be doing. So, Carroll County landfill is charging just for the airspace in the landfill, to where they're still handling all the recycling. And, Carroll County, they are accepting recycling or dual stream recycling from some of those, communities. But those communities are still providing the household hazardous waste, the recycling, and those contracts for the different types of materials for landfill diversion.
and if we were to bring back the various items from Carroll County, does that impact what we think we might need as far as capacity goes at whatever we build to replace the resource recovery facility?
We would account for the projected waste stream. I don't think it would be significant enough to make large changes in the building size, but we would certainly account for that flow when we size the building.
Aren't you doing a pretty quick throughput though? When you get containers full of cardboard, isn't that shipped off pretty quickly? Same with metals as well too. So we're not going to be warehousing this, right? It's
Right.
primarily aggregating it into full loads so you can go ahead and sell it. Is that right? Or
Yeah,
in terms
yeah.
of your-
So if
their-
it's like a single stream recycling, which they're not doing, they have their own process for that for dual stream. So for the material that would be coming over would potentially be baled cardboard or plastics or mixed paper, and possibly glass, but the electronics would be a large part of that as well. So that would eliminate their cost that it would be for transportation to take it back down to Des Moines or whoever the buyer or the recycler would be.
it's a good question, but the point is we're not trying to warehouse. Like you see some
Yes.
recycling places and they're huge warehouses that are just aggregating all this material, but that's not the vision or model here. Is that correct? It's really primarily helping them out and getting a larger load and then getting revenue from that. Would that revenue be shared with them, or how would that work? Or would we get, if we're hauling it back here, we get all the revenue, which would help defer some of our costs? Or to be determined?
Yeah, mainly to be determined, but yeah, in general, we would account for the tonnage that they're bringing and then reimburse them in some manner.
Okay.
It seems like this, as long as we have that kind of reciprocity where we're not bringing back empty trucks and we may get something from that, that this actually maybe furthers climate action goals for a broader portion of central Iowa, not just for the city of Ames, which to me seems like a valuable consideration.
Right.
Brian, I know you worked a lot on this. Do you have anything you'd like to add to the conversation?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize this is one component of a number of different steps that we need to take here in the next 2.5 years. We are on what is essentially a deadline to develop the next generation of how we're going to handle and dispose of solid waste, because we have this need to transition out of the waste to energy business in order to address a lot of the technical, financial, and other aspects of how we handle waste and how we generate electricity. So as we have these conversations, we're also working on identifying a site for a transfer station, and then the financial modeling of what the development of this new operation might do to tipping fees, might do to per capita charges. A lot of it's going to hinge on what kind of agreement we would be able to nail down with Carroll, and then the costs of developing our own facility. So we've got a lot of work to do in the next couple of months to identify what that might mean and then communicate that with the partnering communities in the resource recovery system. So we plan to come back to the council early next calendar year with some more information and some more decision points about how we're going to accomplish that as we get ready for the budget. And then John, do you want to touch on the grant?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
We've been working with the sustainability officer, Nolan, and our department to put together a SWIFR grant, Solid Waste Infrastructure for Recycling grant that's through the EPA. So that will be submitted for the building itself, as well as the equipment in the building. So the shredder, the drum magnet, the eddy current system for the non-ferrous. So those recycling components that are inside of the building, as well as the building itself. So next week on your agenda would be a resolution supporting our application to EPA.
So would you just walk through, so your, tonight, basically the action is just intent to negotiate.
Correct.
So walk council through what would be the next steps through this process. This won't be the last time this comes before council or the last time people would have, I mean, people have opportunity to provide input as they go along the way, but
Yeah, definitely.
we have a looming deadline, as Councilman Garten clearly identified.
Right. Yeah, so this is a formal step that they had requested so that we can enter into specific negotiations about terms, about costs, and all the details involved in that agreement. So this will kick that effort off. Then, as we just mentioned, we'll be submitting a grant next week to help fund the infrastructure that will need to be built. And we're also continuing to look at land to site the transfer and recycling facility. So we tentatively plan to bring that back on January 14th to get your further guidance on moving forward on a site to build these improvements. Then from that point, once we've got the land secured, or while we're doing that, we will solicit design services, so engineering services to design the site and the building. And then at that point, we'll be back before council again, hopefully with acceptance of the EPA grant, and then also with putting plans and specifications for construction out for bid.
And when would the an agreement between Carroll County and the city of Ames, would that come in the next few weeks, months, or how long would that take? Or
We want to move through as quickly as possible, but make sure we touch on all the issues that need to be discussed. But we want to probably get this back in a matter of a few months at the most.
All right.
John, we've got a system now where people can take their trash out and they don't have to separate out the recyclables. And we have a voluntary system now, but my guess is it's really only scratching the surface in terms of the amount of recyclables, compost, and other materials that we're putting into our waste stream.
True.
And so am I correct in saying that by going forward with this Carroll proposal, that this really then inherent in that is that as a city, we're going to have to pivot from the way in which we've been doing our trash disposal, and we're going to have to go with what everyone else in the world does right now, and that is to separate out their recyclables from the rest of their trash. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, and moving forward with this partnership with Carroll and with construction of our new facility, an important component of that will be community-wide recycling in whatever manner that council decides to move forward with that, whether it be implementing a city contracted curbside collection, or whether we have mandates for the haulers to offer that service. But in some manner, we'll look at broadening on a community-wide basis that recycling effort.
I think that's an important aspect to this. I just want to make sure is on the table that, and I think we're going to have to go that direction anyway. You mentioned earlier to me before the meeting that of our trash, what percentage of that is recyclable material?
What we've learned is that traditionally across the nation, that a good solid recycling program could receive about 20% of the waste stream as recycling. And that depends on the community. That's just the average community across the nation. But we have a community that's committed to this effort. We will have a concerted effort for public education and outreach, and continuing to promote the recycling effort. So we have hopes that we'll exceed that. But that's what we're kind of basing our analysis off, is that traditional 20%.
And whereas we have the ability to provide those policies for the residential areas, because industry, for example, they handle their own waste removal. Have we had any kind of conversation with some of the large companies and starting conversations about what is to come for them?
You had any?
So on
discussion with-
the recycling side, I think one of the benefits of having a transfer station in an area that we can aggregate all of the cardboard, plastic, mixed paper, we'll see a pretty big influx from a lot of the industrial and commercial.
Oh, I'm sure that's true.
So the cardboard is huge, and all that material right now is having to be taken down, each truck down to Des Moines or wherever they're taking it to be processed or baled and then sold. So we'll be that outlet for those materials.
I mean, intuitively, I would think this would be met with great happiness from our industrial commercial residents. And then we also have partners with Iowa State and our surrounding communities, and this would be a change for them as well. And if there have been any kind of preliminary conversations just to gauge receptivity in terms of what is to come in terms of recycling?
Yeah, Mark has received outreach from a few communities. They're very excited about expanding the recycling in their community, right now, as well as when we move forward in the future. You want to talk about that a little bit?
So there's, like John said, there's been a couple communities or several communities that have reached out. They'd like to do a pilot program, and we're actually taking a roll-off box for cardboard up to Gilbert, along with a glass container. And there's, like I said, there's multiple others that have contacted us. So it's just getting those containers purchased and getting them taken out, and then also having the time to be able to service those containers. Cardboard by volume is the large share of it. Then the plastic and mixed paper will be another one that we can implement after that. Iowa State, we have had some conversations with the recycling coordinator and looking to see how we can have consistent messaging for recycling, single stream and clean commodities for a drop off throughout the whole community, not just Iowa State and City of Ames. So that's something that we could work on as well.
What's interesting, we look at this from a big picture. This whole exercise started when we as a council recognized that there were some long-term challenges with our existing facility and just what we were spending in maintenance, and it was just a good thing to continue. And what's been fascinating, we've had some phenomenal consultants to work with, but this seems like a very important installment in the unfolding of the story. And we could have had no idea when we were looking at just the cost benefit of the maintenance, the potential win-wins that this would bring. This is actually really exciting. This is one of the largest issues that we have faced as a council in the last 10 years, well, in terms of the impact. And
Okay.
it's exciting to see the potential of that.
Yeah. Can I get a motion on the this item?
I'd move alternative 1.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Garten.
Aye.
Dunk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Edie Hanson.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Thank you, John and Mark. I'm sure
Thank
we'll
you.
be seeing you frequently, and thanks for
Thank
your
you.
efforts. Item number 32, 2024 City Boards and Commissions Survey Results.
So good evening, Council. This year, one of your goals was to get a better understanding of who is serving on our boards and commissions, and then to also figure out if there are ways that we can make volunteering more attractive and accessible opportunity to Ames residents. So one of the things that we did this fall was to send out a survey to the existing volunteers that serve on our boards and commissions. So you all know this, but for folks who are watching, if they don't know, the city has about 21 boards and commissions, and it's made up of volunteers who help in a variety of capacities. They might help advise you all on what decisions to make, or they may help with outreach activities. And so we really wanted to just solicit their feedback on why do they choose to volunteer, what's enjoyable about it, and what might we be able to do to make it an even more attractive piece. So at the time that we sent the volunteer survey out, there were 119 seats filled, and we got 52 people who responded to that, so about a 44% response rate. It's not a representative survey or anything, so it's just the what you saw in your packet is just the responses of the folks who chose to respond. I won't go through this in detail because it is available online, but the highlights of it is just that overall, for the folks who are volunteering, there was a largely positive experience that people have. And some of the reasons why people enjoy this opportunity is just the ability to serve the community, to try to make it better. They enjoy learning more about the city and what's happening in the community, and they like having a part in influencing the decisions that are made at the city level. So if you're looking for a way to get plugged into civic engagement, serving on a board and commission is a great way to do that. When it comes to barriers to participation, there wasn't really much that was cited at all. I think the biggest concern was just around time management and time commitment. So some boards meet pretty frequently, some meet pretty infrequently. So there were different opinions about that. But I think the lesson for us as staff is just communicating better what the opportunities are and what the time commitments are around that. So with that said, I think we got from the survey just some really good suggestions on how we might better advertise these opportunities and how we might relook at some of the marketing around them so that we kind of right size the time commitment for the roles that we have available. So I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Questions?
It's interesting to me, Pa, that we have a number of people who felt that infrequent meetings were the thing they liked least. But then there are others who say what they don't like is the amount of time that goes into this. So those two things seem to be kind of in conflict with each other.
Yeah, I think it speaks to just the variety of boards and commissions that we have. We know that we have some that meet quite frequently, and so maybe for those folks it is too often. And then we have some that may meet once or twice a year, or maybe not even that frequently. And so, again, I think it just goes back to making sure that we message appropriately when we advertise for the vacancy.
I think we need to warn people that bureaucracy comes with the job.
Yeah.
Because I do see that as one that was listed as the least enjoyable part, but
I
it's
love
city government.
the comment that's like making decisions that people I know don't like. Oh, I was like, oh, I hear that.
I would agree that there's some really great suggestions that you summarized in here that I think that as I'm sure you will, we can build upon those in terms of and even how to get the message out to other people to encourage. I think I think it was a very productive and worthwhile endeavor. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right. Go ahead.
I wondered what next steps will be. Or is this being put into a timeline, or how are there other conversations, or what's going to happen with those suggestions?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So we will share this with the staff members who staff the boards and commissions. So one of the things that we are able to do is sort of look at who responded and what boards are they're part of. And so kind of providing that feedback to the staff person, we'll do that. And then also we plan on issuing this survey every year just to keep a pulse on how people's experiences are. And we also typically market our boards and commission vacancies coming up here soon. We're about to hit that period again. And so we'll take some of those suggestions of how to market this better and where to market it and put that into practice with our team.
Can you remind us how many boards and commissions have high school student positions available? Because I see we've got under 18 as an age category, but 0 respondents in that category.
Good question.
I
don't know off the top of my head.
I think RPAC is probably the one that would probably potentially have someone under the age of 18.
Seemed like the library might have.
We have 1-year terms on library, Parks and Recreation, I think CODA, and PAC.
Yeah. And that was really easy. That was kind of focusing on trying to capture some of the Iowa State students.
I think there are probably 5 or 6.
All right. Thank you, Pa. We will move on to item number 33, staff report regarding Fitch Family Indoor Aquatic Center project.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. So we have been spending a lot of time over the last couple of years on design and now construction. And for those that are viewing at home, if you haven't been by the site lately, you should go by. We got walls going up, precast panels, and once those are up, roof will go on and can start working on the inside. So with the opening of the facility a year away, we are now starting to transition to operations. So the staff report really focuses on a few items in regards to operations. Wanted to spend a little time with the facility schedule. Courtney will go through survey results that she had done, and then we'll talk a little bit about fee schedule as well. So one of the first things, and I don't know that we always do this enough, but I would want to take this time to thank the Fitch family, Mary Greeley Medical Center, Fairway, and all of our donors to help make this possible. Through grants and donations, over $11 million towards this facility has been fundraised. So I want to thank everybody who has been involved in that. So facility schedule, what we're looking at with Fitch, and we're also looking at Furman. So with the struggles that we have had over the last several years with lifeguards, and finding enough staff. What we are proposing, which is outlined in the staff report, what we're proposing is during the summertime, 14-week period, so the Saturday before Memorial Day to Labor Day, what we're proposing is that the Furman Aquatic Center would be operational like we normally have it for all the activities, open swims, programs, and things of that sort. During that time, the Fitch Family Indoor Aquatic Center would be open for swimming lessons. We would use it for swimming lessons in the mornings and in the evenings. And that's generally what we had done when municipal pool was functional. We did that same thing. The last couple of years, since municipal pool was demolished, we have had swimming lessons in the evenings, which has reduced the amount of open swim time that we've had on those days. So we want to move the swim lessons to the Fitch Aquatic Center. And then lastly, the third component of that is when we have inclement weather, at the present time, if we have to close Furman Aquatic Center, there are no swimming opportunities. So in the summertime, those 14 weeks, what we'd like to do is when Furman is closed, we have an afternoon of thunderstorms. What we would do is say Furman is closed, open swim at the Fitch Indoor Aquatic Center. So that's kind of the components during the summertime. During the Tuesday or from Tuesday after Labor Day to the Friday before Memorial Day, that's a 38-week schedule. Then the Fitch Family Indoor Aquatic Center would be open for business during that whole time. Monday through Friday, we'd have, depending on the day, we're looking at activities maybe starting as early as 5:30 a.m. and then going to 8, 9, 10 o'clock, depending on programs, day, rentals, all of those types of things. So is this an ideal situation? No, it's not. We would prefer to do something different, but with the reality of staffing and I'll give, staff, Courtney, Leanne, and everybody that's involved, working with HR, doing different creative types of things. I don't know if you've seen some of the things on Ames TV recently about why be a lifeguard. So they're really trying different things to get people interested in guarding. Part of that also is retention. And one of the things with having the Fitch Center open, we are really thinking that that's going to help with retention because now people can guard year round. Whereas if they need to work, if they're a college student, they work during the summertime, they have to find a different job during the school year. Now they could continue to guard, and then hopefully they would then guard again the next summer. So again, this is what we're proposing. If we get enough staff, we get additional people, we will refine this and we'll do something different. But for right now, this is what we're proposing, for the facility schedule. Before we move on, do you want me just, Mayor, do you want me to just go through all of it and then just address questions at the end?
Please.
Okay. So the next thing, I'll just have Courtney give an overview of the survey that she completed.
Yeah, so back on November 8th, staff released a survey to the public regarding programming for Fitch Indoor Aquatic Center, Fitch Family Indoor Aquatic Center. And the survey really focused on what type of aquatic programming people would like to see, but then also when they would like to see those programs occur. So we sent the survey out to over 12,500 emails directly, and then it was also available on multiple city social media sites. It was in the Parks and Recreation newsletter, and also a press release was sent out notifying the public of the survey as well. The survey was open for a total of 10 days, and a total of 2,154 responses were received. So these responses, obviously staff will go through and it'll help us develop that first year schedule and assist us in figuring out what type of programs and at what times those can occur for the best of the community. You can see an executive summary of the survey responses. I won't go through every question and every response, but you can see that on attachment A. One thing that was really obviously great to see is overall excitement for the project and really to see it come to fruition. But you can see a lot of the questions just circulated around, different programs, swim lessons, water walking, lap swimming, et cetera. And really just trying to get that insight of days of weeks. So when we're putting that puzzle piece of the schedule together, we can accommodate the most people as possible.
So then the last component of this is the facility schedule, or not the facility schedule, the fee schedule. And what we did is in attachment B and C, there are two proposed fee schedules for 25-26, one for the Furman Aquatic Center and then one for Fitch Indoor Aquatic Center. And what we did is when we looked at this, we looked at comments from Furman, that we get in regards to fees and charges and so on. And then we did do some comparison with other facilities across the state. That was difficult from the standpoint of it was really hard to compare apples to apples. There are some people that maybe had an outdoor center similar to Furman, but then their indoor facility is just basically a rectangular pool. So, but one thing that we did find is that daily admissions were very similar in what we're offering. And what we're proposing that between Furman and the Fitch Aquatic Center, that the daily admission fees and the punch passes would be the same. And our punch passes, you get 12 punches for the cost of 11. So you have a little bit of a savings. What we did then is we broke down the Furman pass that we have, and what we did is we broke it down to a per week cost. So again, 14 weeks for the Furman season. And then we took that per week cost, multiplied times 38, which is the number of weeks in the Fitch season, and got what those passes would be for the Fitch season. So that's what we're looking at. And you can see right now, I will say also that with all of this information is we don't have all the answers. What we're asking council tonight to look at is to approve in concept what we're presenting. But there are things that we're going to continue to refine, and we'll get additional information and we'll get additional feedback, from the public. For example, we realized that at Furman last year in 2024, only 3.6% or 3.4% of the individuals who bought, or either individuals or households who bought passes, took advantage of our scholarship program. Okay. that's pretty low. We feel it's pretty low based on the fact that Story County has free and reduced lunch over 50%. So we need to look at how can we promote that? How can we get the word out? And also, is what we're doing, is it the most convenient, or is it a barrier? We have worked with Micah for a long time, and which has been great, and Micah has been awesome. But is there another way to do it? Could we use free and reduced lunch? Could we use the SNAP guidelines? Could we do something else? So those things we're going to continue to work on. We also realize that with the Fitch passes, it's more money than what somebody has to expend for a Furman. You know, the 14 weeks versus 38 now for Fitch. Some of those costs for even an individual pass or a household pass may be cost prohibitive for people. So again, that's why we want to continue to work on those scholarships. The other piece of that is that somebody may want to purchase a household pass, but expending $745 all in one chunk might be too much for a family. So what can we do? Do we do an ACH payment where they pay monthly, and it creates less of a burden on their budget? So these are all things that Courtney and I have a lot of conversation along with other staff about this, and we'll continue to do these things and see what is the best way. But we wanted to start now with opening a year away, so we can have time to work through these and get some additional feedback. We did spend some time last week, Thursday, at a workshop with the Parks and Recreation Commission. We shared this same information, with them, and they understand the facility schedule that we proposed. They understand that. They were good with it. They're good with the fee schedule. One of the comments that they did bring up was at the bottom of those fee schedules, you saw we defined a household as 2 adults and 3 youth. All right. Some of the feedback that we got from the Parks and Recreation Commission was do we need to look at this differently? And is a household just 5 individuals, whether it's 4 adults and 1 youth, or 1 adult and 4 youths? Does that really matter, to us? And would that help, for people, make it a more enticing option for people to use? So again, we'll continue to look at those things. And then the last thing that I would say in regards to the fee schedule. So, generally with up to this point, we have had resident fees and non-resident fees. So just want to clarify this, is that a resident, and this is for our entire department, a resident is somebody who lives within Ames proper. And even with our registration software, we can put in, those boundaries. And when somebody puts in their address, it automatically knows whether they're in Ames or outside of Ames. Now, another thank you goes out to Story County Board of Supervisors, because they have made a contribution of $500,000 to this project. And in turn, we have an agreement with them that what we will do is we will offer season passes to Story County residents at the same rate as Ames residents for a period of 10 years. So felt that was a good option, and we'll see at the end of 10 years that will be revisited, and Story County can determine whether or not they want to continue with an arrangement like that and provide some additional money for operations, or Story County residents now start paying a non-resident fee. So for 10 years, Ames residents, Story County residents will pay the same fee. Anybody outside of Story County, they live in Boone or Polk or Marshall or Hamilton, they will pay a non-resident fee, and those non-resident fees are generally 30% higher than the resident rate. So So that's just kind of an overview of these three things. And again, what we're looking for is for council to approve in concept that you like what you see, but knowing that we're going to continue to work on these, and you'll see we'll take fees and charges to Parks and Recreation Commission in January. They do approve the fees and charges. And then we'll incorporate all of this into a budget, which we'll bring back to council at some point so you can see what the impact that Fitch is going to have on the tax subsidy for the overall budget. And we'll do that before we present our budget in February. So
Okay.
Any questions?
Yeah, so let's take it. You gave us three different chunks. Any questions, comments on facility schedule? I just had one of that. How are you in the summertime for Mary Greeley Medical Center? It has a therapy pool. Are they taking
Yep.
care of all that programming themselves? And will we have to provide anything that would be staffing wise for that?
Yeah. So actually have a meeting with Mary Greeley on Thursday afternoon to start that discussion. So don't have the answer for you, but same thing. We're starting to look at those partnerships and so on, and how do we work through that?
How about any questions on community input survey?
Just my amazement. We strive for community engagement. 2,000 plus responses, unbelievable.
In 10 days.
Yeah, so kudos to you, and hopefully this is a model for other efforts to get public input. So well done.
Yeah.
All right. How about
Thank
the
you.
proposed fee schedule? Any questions or comments?
I just had the same thought that I think that you heard from Parks and Rec Commission about the definition of a household. So, and this was just, I mentioned this to Keith already, but my own personal anecdote is that I have two housemates, and then one of my housemates' brothers staying with us. His kid sometimes comes periodically, and at Furman this last summer, I was able to do a household pass that got us all in. But I still think Parks and Rec probably made money off me spending that money in terms of per pass visit. But it felt a lot more doable, and it felt felt quite reasonable to be able to cover a whole household. Anyway, the concept of just having a number of people maybe and not defining it, I thought that was a good compromise. I get it. You don't want like everyone sharing the same, like if sharing it with your neighbors or people who aren't under your roof. In my case, we have a handful under the roof, but I like the more flexible definition of household. Just because I do think it would make that pass more palatable, more desirable, maybe. But I'm sure that you'll refine that too. So
Yep.
that's just a suggestion, really, not a motion.
Thank you.
I'm really interested in just how we're going to utilize this in terms of people outside of Ames. So this is going to be such a different facility than one we had before, and there isn't anything like this in, to my knowledge, Boone County, counties to the north. So I think you're going to see some pretty significant utilization. We'll see how this plays out. Quite exciting. Could you just speak real quickly on the swim lessons? We've been in sort of this challenging period where we haven't had as ideal opportunities for swim lessons. Have we seen any kind of noticeable decline in participation in swim lessons in our community during this interim?
I think I'll have Courtney respond to that if you can.
Yeah, I don't have the direct numbers off the top of my head of comparison of Furman and Muni versus now Furman and utilizing the Iowa State University pools during the off season, but we could definitely get that information and share that. We have seen more of as we have gone from the Iowa State University Forker pool to now state, and it has kind of built in that the city will be providing those options in the off season versus where it was kind of unknown initially when municipal pool closed. We have seen over the past few sessions a lot more consistency. I can't say that, but we could get more direct numbers and share that with council.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's an initial phase where maybe some kids are behind in their swim lesson progress, and there's going to be, I think, quite a lot of utilization for your swim lessons, I would guess.
Yeah, I would say that the thing that Fitch is going to afford us Because right now, Forker, we had more time. State Pool, we only have Sunday mornings. With Fitch, and if you look a little deeper into the survey results, there are a lot of people that wanted swim lessons during the daytime, during the evenings, on Saturdays, on Sundays. So staff will take a look at all that information, and I think we are going to be able to offer a lot more options, for people for swim lessons. And with this too, we're not that far from Boys and Girls Club. Could we get a partnership with Boys and Girls Club where, maybe when they go to that facility, they have buses, maybe they truck them over to the Fitch from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and we provide swim lessons. And there's other demographics within the city that we really want to try to get after, that we don't maybe see a lot of participation. So those are things that Fitch is really going to help us with broadening what we're doing.
Any other questions? I would also echo the expressed appreciation for Story County for their generous donation. And we talked about this before the meeting. That is just having something, when you have the fee schedule printed, that defining what resident means. And that also gives the timeline in terms of when it starts or when it will expire. So when you start getting into year 8 or 9, people don't, when they come back for year 10 or 11, they don't realize, they'll say, oh, I thought this was forever. It just kind of gives them that information. So,
yep.
All right. With that, I'd entertain a motion relative to, is there not motion option 1 or option 2?
Move option 1.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
All right. Thank you much.
We'll see you in a few minutes. All right, move on to number 34. Declare the public hearing on a text amendment modifying the newspaper publication requirements to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this item? Seeing none, entertain a motion to continue the public hearing to January 14th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. All right, item number 35, hearing on 2019-2020 Stormwater Erosion Control Program, Iowa Creek. John is here to answer any questions if council has any regarding the project. Declare the public hearing on this project to be open. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to address council on this topic? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion accepting the reported bids.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Entertain motion on resolution approving final plan specifications and awarding a contract to Iowa Earthworks of Huxley, Iowa, in the amount of $1,687,433.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
John? Aye. Corey? Aye. Rollins?
Aye.
Judy Hanson?
Aye.
Fletcher?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 36, hearing on the 2023-2024 Ames Plan 2040 Sanitary Sewer Utility Infrastructure to 65th Street Extension to be, first of all, is there any questions of staff on this item? Declare the public hearing on this item to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council on the sanitary sewer utility infrastructure project? Seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion accepting reported bids.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Entertain a motion on resolution approving final plan specifications and awarding a contract for the base bid to SM Hentage and Sons Incorporated of Jordan, Minnesota, in the amount of $2,036,000.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Corey?
Aye.
Rollins?
Aye.
Judy Hanson?
Aye.
Fletcher?
Aye.
Martin?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
All right, we'll move on to number 37, hearing on car park agility course project. Keith is here. Is there any questions for Keith on this particular project? Declare the public hearing on this project to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this item? Hearing and seeing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. And on this one, council, I would entertain a motion on one of the alternatives. An alternative one would capture all 4 items at once.
Move alternative 1.
Second?
Thank you. Roll call.
Rollins.
Aye.
Feeny Hansen.
Aye.
Better.
Aye.
Garden.
Aye.
Drunk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
And move on number 38. Keith, do you want to offer some comments or input?
Yeah, with this one, because we had to put bid package 2 out for bid again, just going to have Courtney do a quick overview of what was in the council action form, and we'll take any questions that you may have.
Yeah, so in the council action form, there's a summary of bid packages 1, 3, and 4 that were discussed at the November 12th council meeting. Bid package 2 was reissued and we did receive 3 bids. Engineer's cost estimate was $150,000 for that bid. Low bid came in at $109,300. What staff put together with the available funding that has been recognized from the initial funding, but also capital improvement projects within Parks and Recreation, have put together options for council. But the one that staff recommends and what the city manager's recommendation indicates is alternative 1, which would include the base bid for the mini pitch. For bid package 1, it would include the base bid for the concrete for the mini pitch itself at alternate 1, which would include a sidewalk to the shelter, at alternate 3, which would include a sidewalk to Stonebrook Community Church. Bid package 2 for the mini pitch system lights and acrylic surfacing approval, the bid package 3 for electrical and for the lighting system to be pulled from Bloomington Road. It would not include bid package 4 for the water service, as there will be a grant opportunity that staff would like to find more out about at the end of January. So we would address that item at that time and then approve the reallocation of the capital improvement project savings from the community center flooring project in the amount of $90,230 to cover the shortfall of the initial funding and initial project savings that were identified.
Thank you. Questions? Hearing none, declare the public hearing on this project to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this topic? Seeing and hearing none, declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion on one of the alternatives, and the one that Courtney just outlined is alternative number 1, which is staff recommendation.
Move alternative 1.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Feeny Hansen.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Garden.
Aye.
Drunk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
All right, thank you much.
Thank you, Courtney.
Have a
Thank you,
good night.
Keith. Have a good night. Moving on to number 39, hearing on proposal to vacate easements located in Aspen Ridge subdivision, 2nd edition, and Grand Avenue Ridge subdivision, 2nd edition. Declare the public hearing on this item to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this topic? Seeing and hearing none, I declare the public hearing to be closed. Any questions for staff? Otherwise, I entertain a motion on resolution vacating easements.
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you. Roll call.
Betcher.
Aye.
Garden.
Aye.
Drunk.
Aye.
Corriere.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Feeny Hansen.
Aye.
All right, moving on, disposition of communications to council. We have 3 tonight. One is a request from Pete and Monica Steinmetz and a request for option of landlord text notifications of utility outages. Brian, you just recommend this be referred to staff to take care of this, or is there something you want to add to this?
Yeah, I'm sure we can take a look at this if you'd like to refer it.
It's really not necessarily a memo need. I mean, they're just asking for some kind of a way of alerting property owners in addition to those who occupy a piece of property, correct?
That's my understanding. If you'd like to refer it, we can take it into consideration and see what we can do.
I
And
would
also,
move-
and also respond to the, and follow up with the owner or the author too.
Yes.
I would move that we have staff address this concern.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Next is just a memo from Don Com letting us know about where we're at on the LED light fixture installation. And then last is a memo from Damian Pretziger, and unless he gets any direction, staff's going to prepare a traffic control authorization form to add additional stop signs to an all-stop condition at Kent Avenue and Aspen Road. Unless I hear there's a motion, we'll proceed accordingly. All right, very good. Report of governing body, Discover Ames. Anything to report tonight?
We have not had a meeting.
All right. How about Ames Regional Economic Alliance?
I brought my notes from November. I remembered them this time. We had a report from the president of Verbio's Ag Division, and that was very interesting, learning what they do out there. Probably the big point of pride for Ames is that the film Light Painter, the documentary by Eric Schmidt about Dan McClanahan, is going to be made available. It's a wonderful showcase of Dan's talents. And that we have coming up the joint board meeting with the chamber. And that's about it.
Very good. Story County Emergency Management, Tim, anything?
Nothing tonight.
Ames Transit?
We haven't met since last time.
All right, council comments. Emily, you've been awful quiet over there. How about you tonight?
I do not have a lot. Lots going on at the end of the semester. We had our last student government Senate meeting last week. So going into the next year, when we return back from winter break, there will be a lot of projects to do with the senators, especially those senators that are newer and have been confirmed in the last few weeks. So not really anything from me tonight.
Thanks, Emily. Brahman.
I can't think of anything either.
All right. Nita?
We had received some communication about the fact that when people may be unhoused and it's cold, to actually call the non-emergency police number, and that folks can be cared for in that way. So just a reminder to the community that although we don't have a warming station overnight, there are other ways to get assistance. So.
Thank you. Amber, anything?
Nothing tonight.
Couple of fun things. On Saturday, I happened to be in the city gym and was able to catch the last of the Shop with a Cop efforts. I did not realize how many families that we impact. There were 140 children who were impacted by this program. Absolutely fantastic, and kudos to our police department for running with that. Congratulations to Iowa State. The football score wasn't what we hoped, but they made the Big 12 championship. They represent our community, and just really exciting season. We have one more game left, but really proud of our program. I emailed council several weeks ago some proposals on homelessness that I want to move forward on. The fourth one I'm not going to offer tonight, but I wanted to update that PA is working on getting more information on Salvation Army and the utilization of services for the homeless. And so she's going to be coming back to us relatively soon with more information. So there was nothing needed on that. The first motion I will make is to ask staff to draft an ordinance that will create parity among our public spaces. For example, the library, streets, sideways and alleys with our parks, which have a 10:30 p.m. closing. Other communities have had to do this, and I think we're at that point. So I would, and this doesn't commit us to this, but I'd like to see what an ordinance looks like and have a public discussion over that.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Can you define, when we say streets and sidewalks and alleys, is this basically effectively a curfew on the entire city?
It is an effort to regain control of our public spaces. So I think curfew is all encompassing and it would include private property. This is only with respect to our public spaces. And basically, we have a 10:30 curfew in our parks, and I'm simply suggesting that we have a community conversation about whether that's appropriate in our public space, other public spaces.
Well, I'm just trying to understand. So establishments that are open past 9:30 or past 10:30, bars for sake of discussion, how would people get from an establishment using a sidewalk? I'm trying to understand how that would work essentially. I mean, one thing is if like the library's got those benches are in front of the library, that is our property before you get to the sidewalk. The plaza is city property. But then you get to the sidewalk, that is not, it is and isn't our property. It's not library proper property, but it is city-owned property. I'm just trying to understand what you're trying to accomplish there and how it be policed.
So some of this, I am not prepared to offer as thoughtful of an answer, only as to say that we have people sleeping on our sidewalks, so it's not to prohibit people from walking on our sidewalks. I apologize if I came across as communicating that. This is really just to create parity with our parks.
Are you asking us, sorry, just to put some clarity to this, are you asking that staff look at these other communities that you've identified here and understand more about, analyze the mechanisms that they've used and how they distinguish those things?
Absolutely. With any ordinance, we're not inventing something from whole cloth, and I assume that there are best practices that are starting to emerge. And so I assume that our police chief will give careful consideration of the pros and cons and allow council to make a policy decision.
Good night.
Well, your motion said ask staff to draft an ordinance.
Correct.
So that's already, that's an active versus looking into it and coming back with a report.
So sometimes with ordinances, the staff will give us different variations. They will say, here's an ordinance that's used in a large number, but here's another one that we think is more in keeping with our priorities and values. So I'm not suggesting they give us only a single ordinance.
Go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say, I would be more comfortable in asking staff for a memo on these topics and then from the memo, seeing where we would like it to go. But that maybe gives just a little more flexibility for them to bring options and research from other communities.
I am very amenable to that. We need to have a conversation, whether it's over a memo or a proposed ordinance. I'm not sure that matters materially. I just want to have a conversation.
Sure.
So I'd be willing to amend my motion and ask the staff to bring back a memo that outlines options that we could consider.
Thank you.
Okay. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried.
The second is to ask staff to meet with representatives of Old Town to determine whether there are things we can do to increase the level of safety they feel. This is in light of our conversation over the Romero House. And really, this is just in keeping with what we normally do in terms of public outreach and trying to understand, do we have the right infrastructure and the right policing? But I like the idea, because of the large sentiment that we heard, I like the idea of at least offering an opportunity for another listening session with them.
Is there a second?
second, because I want to be able to discuss it.
Go ahead.
So are you envisioning this as something sort of like what has been done in the past with neighborhoods around the hospital, where we're engaging with them about what they see as the issues? Or is this like a one-off neighborhood meeting, show up, staff listens, and then that's it?
Well, I'm not going to prescribe to the staff the exact procedure, but we have, I think, a very good history in our community of being proactive to listen to our residents' concerns, and we got an earful. What I would like to do is that conversation we had was specifically over the adoption of an ordinance. I would like to create a space that's specifically focused on the safety concerns that people feel in that neighborhood. So I'll defer to staff in terms of, is it 3 meetings at the library? Is it, I don't know. I don't really care about that. I'll defer to staff on that. But I think we owe it to the Old Town neighborhood to be more proactive and make sure we're hearing what they want to communicate.
My other question is, well, my initial response is, wouldn't it be better if council was listening to the neighborhood than staff listening to the neighborhood, so that we have a sense of what their concerns are? I think you get a more realistic view of that if you're actually in the room listening. But
I'm not adverse. What normally Steve gives us guidance on is that sometimes it's better for just the staff to be involved. And so we're actually discouraged from being in some of those listening sessions. But I think your point's well taken. We need to receive this, whether it's directly or through the staff in gathering that input.
Brian, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, certainly the staff would be happy to meet with the neighborhood. We can get together a group of the departments that might be best suited to have that conversation and meet with the neighborhood. It might be a series of different approaches in order to get at the issue that you're describing. If that's what you'd like us to do.
You know, to your point, Gloria, it would seem in this situation, if you had a couple of council members there to listen, it would be different than when you actually have some action that's where you're going out and getting, action. So basically, it's a listening session to understand what's going on. I know it can be awkward, or maybe you have 2 sessions, one where you have a couple of council. We can't have more than. Shouldn't have any more than 3,
right?
But preferably just have 2, just so it's not an open meeting. It's basically just trying to get feedback. I guess I would defer to Steve and Brian in terms of whether or not they both should be there. But the point is that I don't know. I just it might mean a lot to have a council member there to be listening to, but I don't know. I think it's worth discussing. I mean, I'm not trying to cross but I think that the concern is if council's there, it might go differently than if there's just staff there as well. So it depends what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, generally we like to keep to the rule that the council members go, you're encouraged to go and meet with people in the community and get to understand their concerns and issues. But that we meet with them separately as staff, just so that there's not an undue pressure on staff. Now that said, I don't think that there would be an issue with certainly with Steve or me or Pa meeting with council members and community members to resolve something. I think what might make sense is, why don't you refer this to us and we can come up with a plan for how we would
proceed.
Yeah, how we would proceed with this, if this is what you would like us to do, of course, if you'd like to do that.
I appreciate Tim bringing those up, because I think it's showing that we're being responsive to what we heard from public input. And even if nothing came of it, it would show we were listening and trying to find out what other things could be happening and why people feel that way. Because it was really more than just one person expressing that. I think it just validates and it shows active listening. They're trying to take some action on it. And I like your idea of let's just get something back from staff, what you recommend, or some options how to proceed to do that, and then get some action on it. Yeah.
I mean, even if there wasn't a single step that we took, I think we had the largest room full of people we have had in years, and they were very strongly held beliefs. So I think having an opportunity to listen is valuable, but maybe we'll learn something. Maybe there will be some things that we can do to help address some of those concerns. So I think there's nothing to lose from listening.
Okay, so your motion was ask staff to meet with representatives. Do you want to modify that?
Certainly, I withdraw my motion and move that we ask staff to bring a memo back to council with options about ways in which we can engage with the Old Town neighborhood, specifically over concerns of the recently passed ordinance.
Second.
The ordinance
Or
or
just safety
safety that
concerns.
is felt? Because this
Yeah,
ordinance will open a
I-
whole different can of worms, I would think.
Yeah, so specifically safety issues. Yeah,
Not
that was sort of
ordinance.
inherent, but the safety issues specifically.
Okay. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And finally, funding is an issue. So what PA is going to come back and tell us is that Salvation Army is running low or depleted the funds that are available for helping with the homeless. What we know without having any further studies is that the people who are homeless are a combination of our own, but also people from other communities. And I don't know if there's any reasonable possibility that surrounding communities would be interested in assisting with this. But I certainly think we owe it to the taxpayers of the community, since we are ones with the task of providing for this housing, that we would specifically reach out to Boone, Marshalltown, and the metro communities to ask them if they would be willing to assist us with our efforts in addressing homelessness in Ames. I don't see any downside with asking.
Do we know for sure though? Oh,
Is there a second?
second.
Thank you. All right, go ahead.
So do we know for sure that, do we have like from one of the agencies saying that for sure this is happening before we ask for those letters? Like, has somebody said, yes, we are bringing, people are coming here from these other communities? I'm just asking the question.
That's a great question. It's a great question.
I don't know the answer.
Here's what we know. We know Marshalltown had a homeless shelter. They no longer have one.
Right.
We know Boone had one. They no longer have one. And Brian can speak with more specificity. This is going back a couple of years, but we had anecdotal evidence a couple of years ago that when the homeless shelters in the metro area were full, then there would be vehicles bringing those folks to our community. And I, in fairness to your question, I don't know what the current status is, but we have to look at this as a regional issue. This cannot be looked at solely as an Ames issue. And I think it's fair, if we're going to assist, we're going to shoulder these responsibilities. I think it's perfectly appropriate to ask those communities to help financially assist with this. That's all I'm asking.
Well, I just wonder if we're getting perhaps ahead of ourselves, thinking about the work that PA is doing in terms of speaking with agencies and trying to find out what they're doing and who they're serving. Perhaps we're not at a point where we can ask other communities to provide that assistance until we know for sure that that's indeed what's happening. And I don't know that we know that yet, unless Bob maybe knows.
I mean, I feel like some of that may come out of those conversations though. So the Bridge Home serves Marshall County and Boone County. I mean, those counties are both part of Two Rivers, which we're a part of, and all of the homeless providers are coordinating services through Two Rivers for all of those counties. So it seems like to me that information is going to come about naturally anyway.
So, but help me understand, why wouldn't we ask those communities, and particularly the metro area, to assist with our efforts on homelessness? Why should we carry this burden on our own?
Maybe the
But
metro
they're
area is spending.
they're
money.
part of the network already. Like they are assisting as part of being a part of the network for Two Rivers.
Well,
I mean, it's a coordinated effort, but the providers that are serving those counties are the providers that exist in Story County.
so, I mean, Brian, I don't want to belabor this, but the funding that's going in to the Salvation Army to pay for someone tonight who needs a place to stay, is that or is it not our dollars? Or are there any dollars from other communities already going into those coffers?
I don't know if I can answer that. I don't know if Pa has that information off the top of her head either. I can't answer that right now.
We don't know that they're not doing that in their own communities too, though, do we? We don't know that. I don't know what Boone is spending. I don't know what the.
Well, how about I rephrase it? I have another.
Go ahead, Paul, if you want to offer something to that.
Yeah, I guess what I would just say is that the asset process, what are the partners in there? Story County, Hawaii, and so they have also been putting in some funding towards emergency shelter services. But those specific cities that you're talking about, we haven't had a direct contact with them to see what they're doing in there.
Would that be part of the RFP that's going out, or you sent out?
Yeah.
It's doing the.
Yeah. Yep. So we're looking for help from a consultant to really do that larger inventory of Story County. And so they would be included in that. So our consultant that we do hire would help us gather information about who's doing what.
Which would include potentially funding and looking
Yes,
at
correct.
what Amber was just talking about. in
Yeah.
terms of what's funding's coming in. So maybe that's going to be captured in that study. Is that correct?
Yes. And those communities will be invited to participate in that county-wide plan that's developed as well.
So, but Pa, in the immediate time right now, we have these studies going along, and I worry that we're placing all these hopes on future studies. My question is more simple. That as of now, the funding for the emergency shelters that will happen tonight, are these other communities in the area providing a dime for those services?
Well, the question becomes, though, if all the people have come from Story County or from Ames, why would Boone or Marshalltown? I mean, we don't have any data to say, well, 15% of the people came from Marshalltown, right? I mean, it's just there seems to be embedded in the motion some assumptions that
There's a big presumption. I don't think that all of these people are coming from Ames. And I think we owe it to our taxpayers to pass the hat to let those communities, and there's no obligation. It should be voluntary. So why in the world would we not ask communities to participate? I see no downside with that.
But
why wouldn't we do that?
to Amber's comment, though, they may already be doing it.
Well,
We
and
don't
the
know
thing
that.
is, I mean, in Marshall County, for example, they have a homeless coordination program just like we do here. It's being funded through the county and United Way of Marshall County and other entities, just like we do here. If they've exhausted funding in Marshall County, or they've exhausted funding in Hardin County or Boone County or whatever surrounding counties, people are going to then naturally go to other counties to seek help. So if Marshall County has run out of funding and cannot provide any more, it's the same thing that would happen here. If Salvation Army has no more rooms to give out and no more funding to give, people are going to go to Polk County or to Webster County or to another place to find where they can get services that have funding available.
Well,
It's a systemic
not
problem.
true.
It's not just.
We're going to open our checkbook and we're going to shoulder this. We're going to find ways to pay for this.
Okay, so let's restate the motion and we're going to vote on it then.
Sure.
Go ahead, Grace. You have the motion.
The motion was to request staff, it was never directly stated what the motion was. There was
Okay.
concept, reasonable possibility that other communities would be interested, such as Boone, Marshalltown, and Metro, to ask if they'd be willing to assist in efforts to house and participate in our funding.
I think it's a good rephrasing.
Okay. It was moved and seconded. Those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion failed. Okay. All right, anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, Gloria?
Well, first of all, I want to wish the ISU students well on prep week and finals week. It's a stressful time of the semester. And wish all the faculty members luck with the grading of all the materials. And I'd also just like to comment on a loss to our community. Tahira Hira passed away recently. And she and her husband, Bob, were donors for the Hira Park. And so they have a connection to the city. But I also had the honor of serving on the One Community Implementation Committee with her and our previous assistant city manager, Bob Kindred, and quite a few others. And it was very clear to me that she was absolutely dedicated to assisting with the integration of students into our community and trying to help us achieve our goals of reaching out to Iowa State students and making them feel welcome here. And so I want to express my sympathy to her family and also just to say what a loss.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right, entertain motion to adjourn.
Will we adjourn?
Second.
All right, those in favor say aye.
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 We are adjourned. Thank you.
Look at the Des Moines Register.